Hi everyone, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're talking about how to think like a software engineer. Not how to write code, but how to think when you actually face problems, because the way you think is actually more important than any programming language. So a software engineer is not someone that memorizes code. That is not what we do, but you're someone that can actually solve real world problems by writing code. So when something breaks, you don't panic. You ask questions like, what is the problem? When did it start? What changed? What should happen? And what is actually happening now? These are very important questions to ask yourself, because they help you to understand simple things like when this problem occurred, and you're able to actually backtrack and come forward with a solution, because you're able to tell just when the issue started. So most developers usually try to just jump straight to the solution. They see a problem or they encounter a problem, and the next thing is they start running about to find a solution. But the issue is that they usually get stuck at this point, because a software engineer would first understand the problem, then break this problem down into smaller parts. So let's take a typical example. Imagine you want to build a login system. You don't just think to yourself, I need to write code. What you actually say to yourself is, what should happen? So yes, I'm trying to build this login system, but what are the things that need to happen on the system? That's when you start to answer questions like, user should be able to enter an email, a user should be able to enter their password, the application needs to be able to send the data to the backend. The backend should be able to take that data and check it. The backend should also be able to send the response, and then the application should be able to show a success or an error depending on the response from the backend. That is exactly how you think like an engineer, step by step. So the big problems are just smaller problems that are put together. So big problems are just many small problems together. So when something feels hard, you usually need to just break it down small enough to be able to take it piece by piece and do it in its smallness. So another thing engineers do is they test their assumptions. So if your application crashes, say you are working on your mobile app or you're working on a backend system, and then you encounter an exception and your application crashes, what you do is you don't just guess. You need to actually check and troubleshoot. You need to check things like your print values, if that helps. You need to check the logs. You need to test one thing at a time. Check the last thing that changed, and or you could even make changes one at a time and see what the expected feedback is, and then you can test again. And that's exactly how bugs are found. So also, engineers don't blame themselves. You blame the system. So when instead of saying things like you are bad at coding, you say things like there is something wrong in your logic. Something in my logic is just wrong. That small change in thinking makes a big difference. Engineers are curious, and when something works, they just ask the question. They ask the question, why does this work? When something fails, they ask, why did this fail? That curiosity makes you grow fast. And another mindset is, you don't need to know everything. No engineer knows everything. What matters is knowing how to find answers. You need to be able to read documentation. You need to be able to search for errors. You need to be able to ask better questions, because that is the real skill. So to think like an engineer, you need to be able to understand the problem. You need to be able to break this problem in its entirety into smaller parts, because picking it apart in smaller parts is easier than trying to look at it from just the one angle. You need to be able to test one thing at a time. You need to stay calm when things break. You need to be very curious. You need to learn how to find answers. So if you change how you think, then definitely your coding will improve automatically, because at the end of the day, the code is just a tool and the thinking is the real power. You are the real brain behind the code. So thank you very much for watching and for staying this far. In the next video, I'll talk about how to stay consistent as a developer, because thinking well means nothing if you stop showing up. So thank you very much, and see you there.